Welcome back to The Why. I'm Lauren Magarino. This hour, we're examining the state of sex education in the U.S. and why there's no universal consensus on how to teach it. The years-long debate over sex education has been tedious, highlighting disagreements such as the appropriate age, setting, and specific subject matter. The Guttmacher Institute, which is a pro-choice research organization, found that between 1995 and 2002, the focus of sex education shifted. For students 15 through 19, the study finds teachers focused less on information about birth control and more on information only about abstinence. But this is vastly different than what it appears voters think kids should be learning. Take a look at this study done on behalf of Planned Parenthood that found a majority of respondents believe students should learn about abstinence and birth control, sexually transmitted diseases, healthy relationships, sexual orientation, puberty, and consent. That's quite the list right there. Now let's hear two differing perspectives on this issue. Unlike other networks, you are not going to see bickering and jabs from both sides. We're having an in-depth conversation to just lay out what we've got going on here. So let's bring in Justine, Fonte, and Michael King. Justine is an intersectional health educator who's been teaching sexuality education for over a decade. And Michael is the director of community alliances at the Massachusetts Family Institute, a nonpartisan public policy organization dedicated to strengthening families in Massachusetts. Thank you for both coming on. And I want to start with you, Justine. Let's start with you explaining, and can you tell us what you believe is the goal of comprehensive sex education?
Thanks, Lauren. The goal of comprehensive sex ed in schools is really to teach young people the topics that are actually relevant to the world they live in. And we do this by providing them with information on how to understand the human body, how to actually listen to it and to take care of it, which actually includes a prevention of child sexual abuse, intimate partner violence, and also allowing them to learn and affirm diverse identities. And these tools are actually allowing them to assert boundaries while also learning how to honor other people's boundaries. So I'm not surprised by that data in people wanting this to be taught in schools.
Michael, where do you and your organization stand on comprehensive sex education in schools, and explain a little bit about why that stance?
Sure. So comprehensive sex education, also known as CSE, it's the kind of sex ed curriculum that the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education considers age appropriate and medically accurate. Those are the two main terms. And we've done extensive research on CSE, comprehensive sex education curriculum, that have seen with our own eyes really the explicit and pornographic nature of the curriculum. CSE includes role-playing sexual scenarios, instruction for students on masturbation, for example, and vivid descriptions of having an orgasm. Even books like It's Perfectly Normal recommend reading for ages 10 to 15 in Planned Parenthood's Get Real curriculum, which is a core text in Our Whole Lives, another CSE curriculum approved by DESE in Massachusetts, demonstrates that the material that is being shown to Massachusetts students, the book actually contains 67 nude illustrations, including adults having sex, teens masturbating, and a man putting on a condom. So again, why are we teaching oral sex and anal sex to 8th graders in our public schools?
Justine, I want to kind of pick on this point that Michael was bringing out about what sounds like parental concern, regarding these topics that he just walked us through and explaining what that literature is sounding like for a variety of different grades. Some of it being sometimes that there's this view of sex being too mature for young kids. What do you say to parents who might think it's my job to have this conversation with my kid and I should decide when we're ready to have it?
Yeah, I mean, the average age someone in the United States has sex for the first time is actually 17 years old. So parents can wait to teach this content in the home front until their child is an adult, but 50% of high school seniors will have already had sex by the time they graduate. And so what CSE is doing is not intercourse education. It's really about teaching the many facets of sexuality that include how to navigate the complexities of human interaction and that make behaviors either safe or unsafe. So there's really no way to withhold this content from children when it comes to sex and sexuality without fully isolating them from the real world. The films that they're watching, TV, video games, pornography, their peers, current events in news, all of these things are educating children without any help of CSE. And when you actually have CSE in schools, it combats those sources by giving students the tools to be critical, to be literate and emotionally intelligent sexual citizens, even if they aren't engaging in any sexual activity.
Let me bring up a point, because we have been talking about this all hour, and we spoke with a pediatrician earlier in our hour about that point about sexualization and whether or not learning about sex ed can result in teens or children, going ahead and being interested in beginning to have sex. And let's see if we can pull up what he said.
There's no evidence that teaching kids about sex comprehensively and properly makes them more likely to become sexually active. There is good evidence that, and there are 22 studies now showing that when kids see a lot of sex on TV, they're more likely to begin having sex at a younger age.
Michael, I know you just said that sexualization is a concern. When you hear that, does that give you a little bit more relief, or what's your comment on the pediatrician's information?
No, it gives you more concern. I mean, look, I'm going to give you page number, and curriculum name, and I don't know if that's what we're going to get from the other side, but look, I mean, this isn't education. This is sexualizing children at a young age. And don't take my word for it. Read directly from Planned Parenthood's Get Real curriculum for 8th graders. Again, 8th grade teaches children to consent to sex. We could even make a point that this is not legal sex education, because in Massachusetts, anything under 16 regarding consent, statutory rape. But anyway, this says, quote, stress that any sexual behavior, talking, touching, sex, should be mutually consensual. 8th grade teacher's manual, page 8 through 13. And then again, what is sexual behavior that Planned Parenthood is describing here? Family letter 8.4, quote, sexual behavior includes many different ways of touching. Again, this is 8th grade. It can range from holding hands or massage to masturbation or what? Intercourse, vaginal, oral, anal. 8th grade teacher's manual, page 8 through 41. So why are we talking about masturbation, intercourse, vaginal, oral, and anal to 12-year-olds, okay? And you're going to tell me, I don't need a study to tell me that this is making kids less sexual? No, it just makes sense to us all. This is sexualizing children, putting thoughts in their head, and being normalized by adults in the room, their teachers.
I want to pivot here. Justine, you were the subject of reporting in the New York Times last year. Some parents had complained about your curriculum, and sex educators told the Times that there wasn't anything inappropriate about what you taught. What, in your view, is the way to handle this sensitive subject with K through 5th grade in particular, children, as an educator?
Through developmentally appropriate ways. My mantra has always been safety, affirmation, and joy in the pre-K through 12 sequencing of programming. So the concept and the goal is the same. It just looks different. So I'm teaching consent with my kindergartners, and I'm also teaching consent to my 12th graders. Now, what is developmentally appropriate would be the type of language that I'm using. And in terms of scenarios, it's not going to be the same as a 12th grader with whatever I'm using with 6-year-olds. So when we're talking about the body bubble and your boundaries, this is you asserting your boundaries and you not just saying yes because you've been told you have to hug your uncle because it's Thanksgiving, even if it's not what your body is telling you is safe or comfortable to you. So being able to actually assert those boundaries is really key to actually making sure they are not vulnerable to child sexual abuse and predatory behavior because they're aware of their actual agency and their right to exercise it. So I believe that the work that I've been doing and know that I'm doing is evidence-based to actually protect students and young people from sexual abuse and gives them the tools to actually assert themselves when the stakes are different in more sexually intimate acts.
So for those watching at home, we've heard, different perspectives, different approaches right here. My bottom line question for both of you, Justine, what will it take for this country to reach a consensus on sex education? If you could tell us quickly.
I think there's really a misunderstanding as to what sex ed is. And I think that they think it is intercourse education. There is a difference between sexualizing people and teaching about sexuality. And when we're talking about sexuality education, it doesn't mean intercourse. It doesn't mean that we're talking about bodies procreating or experiencing pleasure. We're talking about emotional intelligence and analyzing people's power, agency, and their right to understanding how their body works so that they can take care of it.
Michael, same question to you, same bottom line. What will it take to see consensus on how we teach sex ed in our public schools?
Yeah, look, I appreciate what Justine's trying to do with predatory, actions. I just think it's sad that you got to tell Johnny that he needs consent from his grandma at Thanksgiving. I mean, look, I think there's a lot of kids that are dealing with predatory behavior, but the majority of kids in these classes are not. And so to put this thought into Johnny's head that he got to get consent from grandma to give a hug is a little over the top. Now, look, it's hard to find middle ground when, look, there's a sex ed curriculum called Our Whole Lives that's approved by DESE. It's considered age appropriate and medically accurate, but it has a worksheet called Redefining Abstinence. Okay, so wrap that around your head in terms of what are we going to now call abstinence? Well, this is what they're calling it: French kissing, anal sex, penis vagina intercourse. That's abstinence. Phone sex, grinding, sex with clothes on.
Michael, if I could, we're really running short on time. I want to make sure we get to your point about consensus.
Well, that is my point. I mean, how do we get to consensus when you're describing abstinence as penis vagina intercourse?
Right, not having the same terms to even describe something.
Right.
Well, thank you, Justine and Michael. I appreciate you joining us, to really walk us through, and really the viewers through, both of these perspectives and how to approach. I think what we can all agree on is, allowing our children to really live a healthy and safe version of their lives and going into adulthood. So thank you for taking the time to walk us through your perspectives.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the time for this conversation.